Wherever you go around the Greater Manchester area, you don't have to look far to see the Winter Hill transmitting station. If you look a little harder, you can see its counterparts in other areas, such as Moley Park in North Wales, and this the focus of today's instalment, Holme transmitting station. Quite often I get questions from people asking just exactly what all these unusual pointy and curvy things are on these masts. So with the aid of a very big zoom lens and a 16-mile drive, we're going over to Holme to look at just exactly what all these bits of kit are up and down the length of this almost 740 foot tall structure. The mast itself, believe it or not, sits on a ball bearing that's mounted on a huge sunken block of concrete. This way, slight adjustments can be made to the guy wires to keep it completely vertical. The wires are so heavy that they actually bow under their own weight. The site itself sits close to the borders between West Yorkshire, Greater Manchester and Derbyshire and lies in a compound guarded by tall fences, electric gates and plenty of security systems. From here it transmits BBC's Radio 1, 2, 3 and 4 as well as BBC's Radio Leeds, Manchester and Sheffield. There's also transmitting equipment for Classic FM and DAB services BBC National 12B, Digital 1 11D and Bradford and Huddersfield 11B. To those who are new to all this, that may seem like gibberish, and looking at all of the antennas on the mast can muddy the water even further, so we're going to start at the bottom and work all the way up to the top and look at what all these bits and pieces of equipment actually do. Now, some of these items I can't say exactly what they transmit and receive because it's not always easy to tell, but I'll tell you the basic concept of the few items whose transmissions can't be identified accurately. First we have these microwave dishes pointed towards Emley Moor transmitting station, which can be seen from Holme and lies just over 10 miles away to the northeast. What we're looking at here are likely to be links in a chain, for want of a better phrase. Microwave signals are normally limited to line of sight, so long-distance transmission using these signals tends to require repeaters which form a microwave relay network and pass transmissions from point to point. What we do know is that there are back-to-back microwave links on this site belonging to Arqiva, probably for broadcast distribution, and Mobile Broadband Network Limited for the EE and 3 cellular companies. The frequencies used here are 14.5 and 15.2 GHz, 7.5 and 7.8 GHz, 12.9 and 13.1 GHz, and 5.9 and 6.2 GHz. Just above the larger microwave dish is a BBC UHF receive log periodic antenna, a multi-element directional antenna designed to operate over a wide band of frequencies, and this points to Emley Moor. Next up is another series of point-to-point microwave links which follow the same principles and frequencies to the ones we covered further down. This portion of the tower gives us an opportunity to see all of the feeder lines that travel from the transmitter building below to every antenna you see on the mast. What's interesting is this microwave link has been severely damaged. Even if it still works, it's definitely out of alignment to its counterpart further along the chain. This has been damaged by falling ice, a common problem on structures like this. Holme gets extremely cold even on the best of days, and ice soon builds up on the masts which can fall in high wind or as it thaws. As we go further up the mast, I'll show you what features have been added to prevent damage like this to the aerials. Just above these microwave antennas you can see the first set of aircraft warning lights which were replaced in recent years with LEDs. Next up is this set of 6 Yargies. These actually form 3 pairs for 3 different services. The left-hand horizontal pair point in the direction of Llangollen in North Wales and Allerton Park near Liverpool for monitoring. The central pair of verticals point towards Sutton Coldfield just north of Birmingham and are used for rebroadcast standby. Rebroadcast standby, or RBS, is when a transmitter loses its primary or secondary feeds, which could be fibre, satellite or microwave. This is usually a tertiary backup. The set of horizontal Yargies to the right point towards Belmont in Lincolnshire, and Sheffield in West Yorkshire, and again are used for monitoring. Further up the mast is this really old and interesting relic which I'm surprised is actually still here. This points towards a site I've covered on the channel before, Macclesfield Forest. This is a PCM link site which took the main PCM digital feed of the national radio services between Sutton Coldfield and here to Holme Moss. Above the PCM dish is something that's supposed to protect the antennas from damage due to falling ice. These sloped shelters appear up and down the mast to deflect ice down and away from the antennas as it falls. Next up we have the first of 3 cell sites. These are standard panel antennas that provide mobile phone services around the remote area that surrounds the transmitting station. The second site further up also has microwave dishes pointing towards Emley Moor, Penistone and Ludenden to name just a few. Then before the third cell site is an engineer's platform for access, and you can see some sloping shelters to deflect ice away from the aircraft warning lights. And lastly, here's the third cell site which consists of the usual panel antennas. If we travel further up we can see a trough waveguide antenna, and this points in the direction of Winter Hill transmitting station. Interestingly, if you look closely, there's a mount for a PMR antenna next to the trough which has been removed in recent years. Moving up we come to a large microwave link, and this points to Emley Moor which is protected above from ice by a sloped platform. Next is the first of the large pieces of hardware that sit on the mast, the Band 2 reserve array. These are installed at some sites to allow engineers to carry out repairs or maintenance on the main Band 2 array further up the mast without interrupting the service. The reason it's lower down the mast is so that workers are far enough away from it when they're working on the main array, in line with strict ICN IRP power limits. The antenna is made by Allen Dick Antennas and is a circular polarised multi-channel array with 12 large cross-dipole radiating elements. Just above this and barely visible are 2 5-element Band 3 Yargies for Bradford and Huddersfield DAB services. These are pointing towards Holmfirth and the output power is only 200 watts. Above these is another set of protected aircraft lights and a very easily identifiable set of antennas for police airwave. These are 3 sets of 4-stack folded dipoles which radiate omnidirectionally, covering the surrounding area. Next is another large piece of infrastructure in the form of the national DAB antenna. This looks like a cardioid antenna system by Allen Dick Antennas, but I could be wrong. Above this is an FM aerial that I can't identify, and it points towards Pontop Pike transmitting station and is probably for monitoring. Now we've come to the local BBC radio service antennas that sit on all 3 sides of the mast. There's BBC Radio Manchester on 95.1 on the left side, BBC Radio Sheffield on 101.4 in the middle, and BBC Radio Leeds on 92.4 on the right. Then we have another set of aircraft warning lights with 2 engineering platforms above and below. Above that is another sloped ice deflector which protects this large microwave dish that points towards City Tower in central Manchester. And then we have the last of the larger structures, which is the main national Band 2 antenna. This array has replaced an earlier one made by Marconi which was showing signs of age. This new array is now in better shape than the reserve antenna and should last many years at the top of the mast. The National Band 2 array actually transmits all of the BBC national services from the one antenna, and it does this by using combiners which allow a single antenna to radiate the signals from multiple transmitters. Above the main Band 2 antenna is this corrugated structure which I'm not entirely sure on its purpose other than weather shielding, and then we have 2 more platforms above and below the final set of aircraft warning lights. So that's a look at Holme Moss transmitting station and every single thing that sits on the mast. There's also plenty of radio related transmit and receive stuff down at ground level to look at, and the whole site is well worth a visit. Let me know if you'd like to see more of this type of content. I know it's quite long-winded and quite heavy, but I hope I've answered the many questions I get on the infrastructure that sits on these sorts of places.